Life in the 21st century seems to be satisfying, heading along a one-way supersonic speedway. As in the old adage that explains how the universe is ever expanding, our own concept of reality lies between the pinpoint focus on the small handheld screens we so ardently rely on and the increasing volume of information that they provide. Home seems less like the walls that give us comfort and more like the push of a button that opens one of the myriad of apps that promise to make our lives easier. We belong to a generation where clouds have been redefined, where our self-concepts rely more on heart-shaped likes than our own self-like, where we've been told that we are capable of achieving anything. So we press ourselves, lest we let AI close in on us, or pure competition get the best of us, or our own anxieties shape our trust in the world. That is, if climate change doesn't end the world first. Amidst this ever-increasing demand for our attention and supply of information, discerning what's real from what's fake, what's consequential from what's truly superficial, is no small matter. Whichever corner of the world we're in, or however old we are, or however many virtual friends we have. Thus it is comforting to take a moment and reflect on who we are and realize where we've been. And in that space, understand that life is not defined by our screens, but by the feeling that whatever goes on and however tough it gets, there is one place that we all belong to, one place we all feel safe in, one place we all keep inspiring each other, one place we can all truly call home.
From class 2004. I live in Sydney, Australia, and ASF still feels like home.
Besos a todos. I live in Los Angeles, California, and ASF still feels like home. Vamos Bears! Woo!
Hi everyone, Michelle Camazon, class of 2002, currently living in my hometown of Panama City.
ASF still feels like home.
ASF still feels like home.
I live in Italy and ASF still feels like home.
ASF still feels like home.
I live in Aalborg, Denmark, and ASF still feels like home.
ASF still feels like home.
ASF still feels like home.
I live in London and ASF still feels like home.
I live in Portland, Oregon, and the ASF still feels like home.
I live in Abu Dhabi and ASF still feels like home.
I live in Monterrey and ASF still feels like home.
I live in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, building a new digital bank from scratch, and ASF still feels like home.
I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and ASF feels like home. ASF feels like home.
ASF still feels like home.
I live in New York City, but ASF still feels like home.
I live in Turin, Italy, and ASF still feels like home.
And I live in Carlsbad, California. ASF still feels like home.
I live in Greenwich, Connecticut, and ASF still feels like home.
ASF still feels like home.
I'm in Lugano, and ASF still feels like home.
I live in Champaign, Illinois, and ASF still feels like home.
I live in La Jolla, California, and ASF still feels like home.
I live in Canada, and ASF will always be my home. Go Bears!
ASF still feels like home.
I live in Paris, and ASF still feels like home.
ASF still feels like home.
ASF always feels like home.
ASF is still my home.
ASF still feels like home.
Go Bears!
I'm in New York City. ASF is still my home.
ASF still feels like home.
I live in Washington, D.C., and ASF still feels like home.
ASF still feels like home.
I live in Germany. ASF still feels like home.
ASF still feels like home.
Coming to you from St. Louis, Missouri in the U.S., and ASF still feels like home.
I live in Madrid, Spain, and ASF still feels like home.
ASF still feels like home.
The ASF will always feel like my home.
ASF always makes me feel at home.
I live in London and ASF still feels like home.
ASF still feels like home.
We live in Barcelona,
And ASF still feels like home.
From Downers Grove, Illinois, this is Al Alphin, class of 1969, part of the Fighting Osos.
I'm in Seattle, and as you can see, it is raining. It's been a long time since we've all seen each other. Hope you're doing well. I live and work with satellites here in Berlin, and ASF still feels like home.
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 I live in Lisbon, Portugal, and ASF still feels like home.
ASF still feels like home. Go Bears! Go Bears! Go Bears!